All right, so it is the top of the hour, so we are going to get started. So first of all, welcome. Like I said, if you are here for the Analyze, Prioritize, Strategize, Set Up Your Nonprofit for Funding Success this year, you're in the right place. We're glad you're here. We hope everyone's having a great day. My name is Kristen Shoemaker, and I am on the commercial execution team here at Bonterra. I'm stepping in for Amanda DeFontes, our Senior Manager of Virtual Events today, and I will be your moderator. I'm joining you live from Dallas, Texas, so please feel free to write in the chat where you're joining us from. We like to see where people are joining us. While we introduce ourselves, I want to cover a few quick housekeeping notes. The chat will be open and available for you. Feel free to use it throughout the presentation to connect with one another. Please make sure if you have a question that you add it to the QA box so it doesn't get lost. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can at the end of the session. If not, we will reach out to you as well to get those questions answered. We are recording the webinar today, and everyone will receive an email of the recording within the next 2 to 4 days at the conclusion of the webinar. Before we get started, I want to quickly introduce any new attendees to Bonterra as well. So let me share my screen here. All right, so for those of you who aren't familiar, Bonterra makes software for the greatest social goods, propelling you and your mission to peak impact. You can raise more, match more, grant more, help more, and do more good. We have brought together the power of every action network for good, cyber grants, WeSpire, social solutions, Salsa, and more to help you achieve those greatest good goals. We are on a mission to help you build meaningful relationships with your supporters through personalized appeals via email, text, video, and direct mail, organizing your data so you can have better insights and make informed decisions, maximize signups, drive more volunteer action, and grow your network for making an impact, and create a world where a number of individual contributors is on the rise, not the decline. If you are curious about Bonterra tools and how they may be able to help you, you and your team can save time and increase your impact moving forward. Please fill out the poll that's going to appear here on your screen in just 1 second. We'll give people about 30 more seconds to fill out the poll here. Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to go ahead and end this poll here, and then I'd like to introduce you to our speaker. So Joe Conley is the manager, solution architects here at Bonterra. He is joining us today to give you the presentation, and Joe has been with Bonterra 2.5 years, where he manages a team of solution architects. Prior to that, Joe worked at Blackbaud, supporting a majority of their products. Before that, he worked in fundraising, and right now, Joe lives just outside of Boston with his wife and 2 kids. So Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much. So welcome, everybody. And like Kirsten said, today what we really want to focus on is what to do in the now times. And by now times, I mean sort of the between times. You've finished up, hopefully, your end of year fundraising goals and tasks, right? So you've got those receipts out, those end of year reports are all set to go, but we're maybe not yet in gala season. So what do we do here in the middle of February to really make sure that we're setting ourselves up well for the rest of the year and beyond? And so there's three main topics we're going to take a look at. And as we do, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And for those of you who have never seen it before, welcome here to Every Action, Bonterra's fundraising and engagement solution. Now, importantly, this tool really is designed for those of you who are sort of mid-market and up. We have big clients who have their record counts up in the millions, all the way down to clients who are saying 4,000, 5,000 records. Um, we also have another tool called, historically called Network for Good, that is for smaller organizations. And Wayne, we can talk about that offline a little bit. I want to make sure we're focusing here on our topic. So the first thing I want to talk about is, and as I go through, please do drop those questions in the chat and we'll get to as many as we can. So first things first, really want to talk about identifying certain groups, especially those that I think are often forgotten. And here's the group I want to talk about today. I want to talk about those Libunts who we didn't quite get at the end of the year. And this is an important group, right? Because end of the year can be really busy, really complicated for a lot of people. It can also be very financially tight. That being said, we know it is the biggest giving time of the year. So what I see a lot of organizations do is if they miss that, if somebody falls out of Libunts, those last year's, but unfortunately not this year's, they're immediately thrown into the same Cybunt pool as everybody else. And now we're treating them as just somebody who gave some year, but not last year. And that's a big mistake. It's a big mistake because these donors are still far more engaged than many of your other Cybunts. They really are still just like an extended Libunt, so to speak. So instead of treating them like a completely distinct, instead of treating them like just Cybunts, really important to do special messaging for them specifically. Now, in order to do that, first thing we need to do is identify that group. And to identify that group, we're going to head over into contacts, specifically here, create a list. Now, those of you who are using systems that aren't Every Action, create a list is just our query overlay tool. And what you'll find is that pretty much every system has some kind of query overlay tool, but I will argue that this one's really nice because it's intentionally in real language. So we want to find everybody whose most recent gift in this case was in 2022, right? They're not a Libun. They gave in 2022. A couple months ago, they were a Libun though. So we'll head over to include individuals. But one of the things that makes this tool so effective is how easy it is to think in terms of households instead. It's a very strong householding tool. Or we'll, in this case, think about individuals whose most recent contribution was between, and in this case, 1/1/2022 to 12/31/2022. Now I can stop here. I can preview my results. And it's going to show me that I have 55,000 contacts for whom that's the case. Just as our relative marker of scale, we have over 400,000 contacts in this particular database, and that doesn't stress the system in any way. So I've got my 55,000 contacts that are now going to be what I think of as my Libunts plus. Those people who maybe had every intention of giving at end of year, but just kind of forgot, got busy, or because so many other organizations are asking and holidays are here, just got tapped out, so are now maybe ready to make that gift. What I want to do though is I want to go ahead and add one more step. One of the things I really like about this tool in particular is the way it leverages real language. So in a lot of systems, you would see and ors, but that gets super complicated. Back when I first started at Blackbot, I was on the client training team, and nothing got people more tripped up in queries than and or statements. Because as you know, the and or in a typical query refers to the criteria, not the overall constituent, trips people up every time. Here, though, the real language, add contacts, that's just going to increase the number of contacts. It's the or statement. Narrow contacts, that's going to narrow down the number of contacts. It's the and statement. Or remove contacts, that's the sub operator. Why is that so exciting? So all of you query nerds know that in many cases to get a sub operator, you actually have to take two standard queries, slam them together, and the result is always static, which is fine. But where it gets really helpful is instead not having it static, but having it dynamic. So we're going to go ahead and remove contacts here because I'm going to go ahead and just remove anybody who has the code of major giver. And I always go right past it here. But what this tool is, this is our activist codes. And our activist codes are your high level tagging within our system. Think of it if you're thinking of Razor's Edge, like a combination of constituent codes or and attributes. If you're thinking old school Razor's Edge, if you're thinking about like an e-tapestry, think of it in terms of your custom fields, your high level tags. So see how many that flags out for us. Because in this case, I don't want to, and in this case, it doesn't flag anybody out. But I don't want to send this messaging to my major givers. Maybe they're on a different type of cycle. They're saving up for another major gift. So I don't want to get in trouble there. We'll go ahead and run that search. And what I want to do now is save it. I'm going to save it as a saved search, so it's saved dynamically. Pick my folder, put it in automation, and we'll save. All right. Next step is to pop this into automation. But before I do, let me take a look at some of our questions here. Kelly asks, does Montera have an integration with Wealth Engine or any other donor research tools? If so, how do we find out about it and pricing? It does, Kelly. Every action here has, or Montera has an integration with Wealth Engine, iWave, and Donor Search. So we really let you choose. Importantly, we do not charge for the integration. That's just a standard part of working with us. Obviously, though, you do need to have a contract with Wealth Engine, iWave, or Donor Search in order to utilize those tools, and all of that would come from that particular vendor. But we keep your options open. Okay, Lucas. So Lucas asks, is there a payment processing company that can integrate multiple payment options within my website, including the API integrations with the following payment processors: PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, Patreon, Apple Pay, Google Pay, and credit card. The payment processing company engine widget should include centralized analytics of all donations for reporting and CRM. That's an exciting question for me. And I'm going to tell you why it's an exciting question for actually two reasons. Reason number one is we exist as not just a payment processor. So if you just want a payment processor and nothing else, we are the wrong people for you to look for because we are a full, complete CRM and digital engagement platform. I speak a lot about Blackbaud, both because I came from there and because they're the like industry leaders. They just have the biggest most people know, right? If you work in fundraising, you probably bumped into Blackbot here or there. But essentially, we are a combination of Razor's Edge and Luminate in a much more easy to use format. Do it all. So if you're looking for somebody who can do it all, we are the right people to talk to. If you're looking for just a payment processor itself, you're not. We are not. But And here's where things get very interesting. We have our own payment processing tool. With that payment processing tool, we can receive many of the payment options you mentioned. Not all of them, but many of them. And then Leanne says, is this webinar only on every action? I'm a Network for Good user. So product-wise, yes, Leanne, we're only looking at every action here, but everything I'm going to be talking about is also relevant for you strategically when it comes to Network for Good, right? Because in Network for Good, you should also be thinking about your Live Months Plus. You should also be targeting those people who just missed at the end of last year, but might still be very engaged. So yes, we're only talking about every action product wise, but hopefully some of the tips, the things we're talking about are relevant regardless. Cool. That gets us to the end of those questions right there. Let's hop into our next step because what we definitely don't want to do is have to heavily manage a drip campaign or communication campaign for this group, right? Too much work. So instead, we're going to run it all right out of automation. Let's go ahead and start a brand new one. We want to build out that workflow. So first things first, who should be included in this? Now, in this case, this is really a one-time workflow. Like they've got in, they're going to start to run, but our system will run every day to identify people who meet these criteria and run it through. So this is fantastic for all of your other drip campaigns. Things like new donor welcome series, recurring giver drip campaigns, major giving or planned giving drip campaigns. Fantastic for things like volunteer and membership renewals. So we've got our entry group. Next, what do we want to have happen to them? Well, there's a lot of things our system can make happen. We can apply or remove coding. Fantastic way to automate the tagging and coding of records in your system. Quick example, when somebody volunteers 5 times, we want them to be tagged as a super volunteer. Set up the automation and just let it run. Don't worry about like identifying the query and then having to go back through and after you've done the query, do a global change every so often. No, forget that. Let the system do it for you. Circling a little bit back to Kelly's question, we can do wealth engine screens right out of the automation. Can assign staff, that's assigning a staff member to that prospect, usually used for major giving. We could also follow contacts for your major givers. What that's going to do is it's going to give them an email digest of every change that has happened on the record the day before, right? So your major gift officers don't again have to have a bunch of queries that they're using to try to identify changes or just like go back through and like screen all of their people in their portfolio to see if changes happened. Yuck. Our system handles that. Schedule follow-ups. That is scheduling those tasks that you want someone to engage in. Send an email. We'll look at that in just a second here. Or send a mobile message. Because yes, our system does mobile messaging right out of it as well. And again, that's the theme I'm going to keep coming back to. It is so crucial that everything that's going on with your supporters, you're tracking it all together in one place. So you're not in this weird, awkward world where like membership has one thing going on and annual fund has another and major giving has another and volunteer has another. And because they're all doing their own weird things, that information isn't all coming together and your supporters get a really disjointed experience that feels bad. That's not what we want. In this case, though, let's say the first step we want to do is send an email. We're able to build that email right within this widget. You can also go ahead and build it outside of the in another section of the system. Oh, sorry, Live Months Plus. Now, importantly, just like everything else we've been looking at, it's all built right within this tool. We're not pushing the information out into MailChimp, into Constant Contact, and trying to maintain a wonky integration that isn't working great. It's all together in one system. And we won't go through the full process of building out an email, but note that we have templates that you're able to use as we hop into it. You get a standard WYSIWYG editor, but important things to note. we have robust merge fields. And that's the real value, right, of it all being in one system. It's not limited by an API to what information I can push back and forth in this email. I can push back whatever exists on the contact record. So I can have a real, true conversation with a real human being and not just talk to them like they're a walking, talking, breathing checkbook. So we'll build out the email. And then the other thing we don't want to have happen is we don't want our supporters to end up on just a bullet train, right? And no matter what they do, no matter how they engage, we're sending them the exact same content. That's not helpful. And again, it's not a good supporter experience. What's a good supporter's experience is that things change based on their behavior. So we'll have a decision point. Now I can make that decision based off of a saved search. You can get really, really complicated with what you're asking the system to do, or make it super easy. As a result of the email, did they click or not? If they did click, we'll send them down one path. If they did not click, we'll send them down another so that their engagement then affects what they experience, right? They're not just trapped in a one-way path. So circling back around, step one, first thing to do, first thing to think about, target back those Libun pluses so that you have an opportunity to re-engage them before they just get thrown in your big old Cybun pool and potentially get forgotten or less personalized, less specialized communication. So let me pause there to do two things. One, Kristen, you can launch that poll, and team, drop those questions. And for a couple of you, where you're those of you who are selecting, we do, but I'm not sure if Bonterra can help. I need to learn more. I would love to know what would you need to learn more about. Um, Not that we'll necessarily have time to dive into that topic specifically, but it might be something we talk about in our next webinar. And or would just be really interested to know if this topic isn't getting you what you need, what would. So no pressure, but would definitely be curious for those of you who selected that. Ha! Okay, fair enough. Fair enough, Bree. So Bree says the price, which, yeah. Um, if I was talking to a group of major bankers, that maybe wouldn't be an issue, but you all are nonprofits, and for sure, the price matters. Fortunately, they don't let me know anything about the pricing. My job is to know about the system. That's a great question. And so let's spend a little minute here talking about it because Jolie asks, is every action similar to NFG? And the answer is absolutely it is similar, but it is absolutely not the same. And here's the big difference, right? NFG is designed for smaller nonprofits than every action is designed for. So, what are the things I sometimes like to equate it to? It's sort of like if you are a tradesperson, a pickup truck versus a big box truck, right? Once you hit a certain point in your business and the type of work that you're doing, you need to go from working out of a pickup truck to working out of a big box truck, right? Maybe you're a plumber, you need to get to a point where you can actually have all of your pipe cutting tools there in the big old box truck. This is kind of a similar story. There's really nothing that Network for Good can do that every action can't do, but there are a number of things that every action can do that Network for Good can't. So, as an organization, for some of you, maybe Network for Good is where you'll be at, and that's based on the work that you're doing, the group that you're serving. Totally makes sense to be on Network for Good forever. But for others of you, as you grow, you get to graduate from Network for Good to every action. And that's definitely something to celebrate because it means that your organization is growing, it's increasing, you're getting more robust in your fundraising activity. Absolutely something to celebrate, and something that does happen in the life cycle of many organizations. Well, cool. All right, that was topic one. Let's move over to topic two, measuring, analyzing. What you measure is what will matter. And I think sometimes we end up thinking about that in the opposite direction, thinking, okay, what we matter is what we'll measure, right? And that's the way we should be doing it. But as you start to identify the metrics you're going to lift up, those are the metrics that's going to be and that are going to be important for your organization. So it's important to decide what it is that you want to measure. Sure, Donna, that's totally fair. And I apologize if you felt misled by the topic. Totally fair. But yeah, we are not focusing in this particular conversation on the NFG system. And for everybody, right? No ego. It's important to do and use your time, which is a very precious commodity, in the most effective way that you feel. So, apologies if you felt this was misleading, and you won't hurt anybody's ego if you say, yeah, okay, this isn't the best use of my time. So what you choose to measure is what's going to matter for your organization. So you want to be very intentional about it. Importantly, you can't measure everything, right? And you can't decide that everything is important because you're not going to be able to focus on everything. We want to have more new donors and more recurring donors and increase our donation sizes and increase our membership program and see increases in all of our channels and maximize all of those and increase our donation email open rates, right? Now, as the team gets bigger and bigger and bigger, like if you have a 10-person marketing communication team, marketing communication can have their topics for sure. But as an organization as a whole, it's important to identify, I would say, 2 to 3 key indicators that you're going to focus on and focus on those specifically. Now, which key indicator you should specifically focus on, well, that's kind of up to you. It's kind of up to your organization, kind of up to where you fall in your organization's life cycle, right? Are you a brand new organization that really needs to be focusing heavily on those first time gifts? Do that. Are you an established organization, but you're noticing you're starting to fall a little bit behind on the recurring gifts? Focus on that. Are you instead looking to optimize your channels? Focus on that, right? We give you those opportunities to really identify what it is that you need to focus on in order to improve your organization. So I'm going to give you a couple of different ways that we're able to help you do that. The very first one is to identify, let's say you do need to drive new supporters. Let's identify that. So what we want to do is we want to head right into one of our reports to identify, excuse me, our donor comparison. Now, as we start to look at our donor comparison, right, you get a lot of control over which information you're looking to filter off of. Are we looking to filter off of things like our source coding, our campaigns, our channel, and who do we want to look at as part of this? As we go to generate that report, it will pop up with our bell, and we're able to look at how we've performed across our various donor groups, right? How many people went up? How many people stayed the same? How many people downgraded, right? Versus our active, first time, or reactivated. Very, very important numbers when it comes to understanding and evaluating program. Let's back up because reports can be very, very helpful, but it's also sometimes very helpful to see that information visualized. So let's head on up to our analytics dashboards. Now, our tool starts you out with some fantastic analytics dashboards, like, for example, contributions dashboard. You turn on the system and you get it. But you may find instead you need to build your own. Let's go ahead and start by building our own dashboard. 2024 analysis. Let's start by adding a widget. Now, like I said, it's crucially important that you identify what it is you're looking to measure, what it is you're looking to compare in order to then see growth, in order to decide what it is that you need to do. Maybe in this case, we really want to evaluate information based off of the number of donors broken down by our different channels. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, wait a minute, Joe, in a lot of our systems, I'm not used to the notion of channel. What is channel doing? Well, channel is a high level way of grouping together various different appeals. Many of you are probably used to a campaign, fund, appeal, package structure. But what ends up happening, what I see a lot of organizations do, is they end up then using campaign to try and get at a sense of channel. So, okay, this is our online campaign, this is our mail campaign, our in-person campaign. But that tends to be not effective because then you lose what campaign is designed for, which is the larger initiatives, things like an annual campaign. And now here in 2024, if we're not having all of our campaigns be multi-channel, be looking at tying together mail and online and email and in-person and events, we're really going to be left behind. So it's crucial that campaign and channel exist as separate markers that you're able to report off of. And so we can add that. Now, the reason this is going to be important is it allows you to, in real time, be keeping track of how many donors you have tied to your various channels so you can see which are more effective in driving donors. Now, note that I'm saying donors and not revenue or contributions, right? These are two very distinct things that you need to decide which one it is you're going to look at today. This year, are we really going to be looking at the number of donors, or this year, are we really going to be looking at the amount that we're bringing in? Now, again, obviously, high level, you have to report numbers back to the board, right? You can't decide, you know what, board, this year, we're not going to tell you how much money we raised. That's not going to go over too well, right? But it is going to allow you, but you do need to, excuse me, think about focusing on very specific metrics. Let's go ahead and add one more as an example of what you might be tracking. We'll head on over into our membership report. And for those of you who are tracking membership, maybe one of the things you're paying attention to is the number of lapsed members. And we want to filter that by let's say the expiration date by month, and a bar chart is okay. But let's instead look at it at a line so that you're able to track those different metrics, right? Now, if you can see here, something I'm noticing very intensely is that the majority of our lapsed members lapsed between October and December of 2022, right? Right there in November. That's a really interesting data point. Now, to be fair, this is a sample environment. And so the reason everybody lapsed there is because that's how the data was sent in. It was imported for demo purposes. But in real life, if you're starting to see things like big spikes like that, that tells you something's going wrong. Maybe, again, circling back around, something happened here in this end of year period. People who were members maybe got an appeal and they thought that would apply to their membership, but it didn't. And so they got lapsed, right? Start to identify these trends to figure out what goes wrong. Fantastic question from Douglas. Douglas asks, how easy is it to import old donor, member, or volunteer activity into Bonterra? And the answer is fantastically easy, and I'm going to tell you why. If we were to head on over to do an import, I know for some of you are thinking, Joe, why are you showing off import? Mostly because it was asked, but also because our tool is so strong. When it comes to importing data, you've got two main options. One is to use a unique identifier. You're probably all used to using unique identifiers, but we don't just trap you in using our unique identifier. So if you have a unique identifier from another system, either the previous database you're using, or if you have, say, a programmatic database and people are assigned an ID number there, that can be pulled right into every action, and that can function as your unique identifier. But we make it even easier. We can load new data or make changes to existing contacts without a unique identifier at all. In that case, the same duplicate management tool that's running for pulling in new contributions when they come in online is running here. So if that system that you're importing the data from, as long as it has sufficient information for that match to work, then it works extremely well. Yeah, you know what, Doug? Tessatora is a great example of an organization or a tool that you might use in addition to every action, especially if you're using Tessatora for the specific arts and cultural stuff that every action doesn't do. By specific arts and cultural stuff that every action doesn't do, I mean like a gift shop purchases, daily ticketing, and then some of the other more advanced, if you're like a concert hall, some of the ticketing stuff there, the Tessatora does, we don't do. Just to make sure I say it for the record, for ticketing, like ticketing events like galas, fundraising events, we do it fantastically. Where I'm answering Doug's question saying ticketing, I mean specifically like admission ticketing that you would see for arts and cultural organizations, museums, zoos, aquariums, etc. And Whitney asks, does the system communicate well with QuickBooks? Yes, it does. Okay. Other questions here around metrics, identifying them, thinking through them, and really being specific about the metrics you are measuring. Cool. The last thing I want to talk about here is being proactive and planful, especially when it comes to major giving. Oftentimes I see organizations treat major giving as just like a random cash flow and cash fall, right? Where we have these various major gifts that are in play and we hope that they'll come in at some point, and when they do, we celebrate. I've heard some amazing ways that organizations celebrate, from hitting gongs, ringing bells. Somebody, one organization, there was a specific major gift come in dance that you did, right? All sorts of fun ways to celebrate. But we can't just rely on those random guesses about when major gifts may or may not come in. Instead, it's going to be very, very important to be able to be intentionally planful about our major giving program. And how do we do that? Well, we need to understand how long our major gift plans tend to last. So to do that, we're going to head back into one of our reports. Now, if you're new to every action, right, you've just come in from maybe like a network for good that doesn't have as robust a major giving tool, you won't yet have the data to do this. But for those of you who have been in the system for a while, or if you're importing a lot of data from your legacy system, or if you're just using your legacy system and you can still pull this off, this is something that's important to do. We're going to head right into our moves management action plans and a moves management report here. These moves management plans, these are the plans that we're going through in order to track how long it takes a gift to go from the beginning of the plan all the way to the end of the plan, right? So that we can start to understand on average how long are our plans running for, when can we expect the money to come in. So first thing I want to do is I want to see big history. So I'm going to remove the date filter. I want to look at all of my plans. And then from there, I'm going to run into edit my filters, specifically on the plan details, and then specifically on the status, starting with identification. Let's run that report. So first things first, average amount of time that a plan is in that first step is 767 days. Now, already I'm identifying a problem, right? Because if we have so many plans that are just at that first stage for a long, long time, either one, our pipeline management is atrocious, or two, we're creating a lot of these potential opportunities. People are now flagged as major givers, but nothing is then happening with them. So that is way, way too long, already identifying a problem we need to fix. Let's go into the next stage now. Qualification. Run that report. And I see again another big, big number, also identifying for me that there's a problem. And let's say though you have a much better program than in this hypothetical database, and we're talking about say 30 days in identification, another 60 in qualification. All right, good. What we're already noticing is that that's 90 days on average overall, 90 days on average that we're working in qualifying the gift before we even get into the solicitation process. Keep going down into cultivation. How long are we cultivating these gifts for? 815 days. I might just cut off the last number and just think about it in the first two. But let's say it's about 81 days that they now tend to stay in cultivation. We're hitting about half a year now. So what does that mean? What that means is that on average, gifts that major giving plans that we start now, it's going to be more than a year before they come to fruition. That's important data to have because that allows us to understand when it is that this $10,000 gift, this $50,000 gift is going to come in. It lets us know that, okay, in our probable amount right now, we're looking at just about 500,000, which we can expect to see in about 6 months. This is important information for budgeting. This is important information for pushing through to then understand what programs we can and can't invest in and when. And this is important because it makes sure that we're not just trying to live off of that ongoing whale fall. And instead, what we're doing is we are working with a good flow of cash. Now, importantly, too, as we talked about, what you measure is what you get. all of this information, all of these reports can go back over into that report visualization. But there's other ways to engage with this tool as well, right? We head over to fundraising management, walk into our major gifts portfolio. And from here, we allow you, one, as the individual major gift officer, to keep track of your individual portfolios, what you have coming up, what you need to do next. And then what is noteworthy. Now, again, I keep referencing Blackbaud because it's specifically Razor's Edge because pretty much everybody's heard of them. If you're a Razor's Edge NXT user and you're looking at this, you're like, hey, this looks like my portfolio in Razor's Edge just flipped. I don't know who was looking over whose shoulder, but yeah, it seems like it's pretty similar in these two tools. You move over from Razor's Edge to us, and nothing is lost. But what I really want to talk about is this window for action plans. Some of you may be one-person shops, right? You may be flying solo. But for many of you, especially those of you who have dedicated major gift officers, you have meetings where you're coming together to discuss your plans and how the moves are going. We make that extremely easy to be very planful and to have high visibility into your active moves management plans so that you are then keeping track of and tracking to when that gift is going to be realized. Sure, Whitney. Now, from here, you can do a lot of things. You're able to send out an email right from this window, add notes, schedule follow-up. And again, follow-up is just the individual tasks that people are performing, as well as mark those next moves as complete. Circling back to Wendy's question, you can add a new pledge here, and you can edit action plan as well. So I'm tracking pretty close to where I wanted to be. So let me pull in a little bit of a wrap up. I was hoping to finish this by 1:45, but in summation, this time of year, there's still a lot to do to set yourself up for the future. Now, always remember, and I will always say this, y'all are nonprofit professionals, you're not martyrs. So after all of the work you did at end of year, after all of the work you had to do in January to get those receipts out, to get those year-end reports put together, y'all deserve a break. Y'all deserve a rest. But you can't rest all the way till gala season. There's important things to do here in this February time. That's not just like data cleanup. I remember we used to get a big old pile of paper to do data cleanup, which is also important, but there are other planful things you want to do. In terms of those planful things that you want to do, one, use this as an opportunity to reach out to those LiveBunt pluses. Two, use this as a real opportunity to strategize as a team what 2 to 3 metrics you're really going to focus on this year. Build out the reports, build out the dashboards, build out what you need to be tracking that every single day. So that's what's up in your face because what you measure is what will end up mattering. And then three, use this as an opportunity to go back over your major gift plans and identify your timelines, understand how long it takes for a plan to be in each individual stage, and how long it takes for that plan to come to completion. So you don't find yourselves just living off of whale fall of major gifts, and instead are really able to proactively identify your likely cash flow. So that's what I have for you today. I know we have, like I said, I meant for us to leave mentally 15 minutes. We have 11 minutes where I want to hit some of these additional questions that are coming through, either about this content or about whatever else you have on your mind. I see a couple here from John. So John asks, is there he says fee demo period? I imagine you mean a free demo period, like a free trial. And we don't offer a free trial with the system because this system is a core database. It needs to have your data in it for you to really start working with it. And data implementation is a real project, right? It's not something that we can just knock out in a week. So there is no free trial and just like using the system for 90 days and deciding whether or not you like it. But if you are part and working with us, we can offer you sandbox access. Sandbox access won't be your data, it'll all be fake data, but it does give you an opportunity to try out things to make sure like you're okay with the gift processing tools and the email creation and things like that. So for the purposes of trying out the tools, we do have the ability to do that, but there is not like a free 90-day trial in the system, specifically because we can't give away free implementation. It's just, it's too much work. And then Whitney asked, if you have time, um, can you handle any part of pledge tracking? And then Chris asked, how does your system handle traditional print mail? Let's look at both of those. So one, taking a look at some of our pledges. And to do that, I want to head right over into a record here for Charlene Meyer. As a quick orientation on the record itself, record is broken down into four main sections. On the left, you can see contact information, phone number, email, physical mail, address, including seasonal addresses, her contact preferences, her name preferences, relationships, things like that. On the right, this is going to be information that's more coherent to what your organization is doing. Activist codes, that high level tracking, membership tracking, plan giving, wealth analytics. Then in the center, we'll see some high level metrics that you get to decide. Overall activity, everything that she's been up to, really helpful for a major gift officer to see that immediately. High level notes, and then the full on financial information. So overall contribution summaries, recurring gifts, moves management plans, giving history, and our custom fields. Now let's pop into one of Charlene's pledges. So we hop over into pledges. A donor is able to have one or more pledges, right? You can have multiple running at the same time. And let's hop into one that is ongoing. So with a pledge, you're going to include, the amount that's pledged. We have our tracking information, the fulfillment date, and you can either set it up to expect one single fulfillment date or set it up as an installment schedule. So the installment schedule is typical to what you expect with pledge installments. You can set them up as monthly, as quarterly, or as completely random. Can also track whether this is a to give or to get pledge. So usually I see organizations use this in regards to board members. If your board members have like a give get responsibility, you can use the pledges to tie that back and track that real nicely. Any conditions or commitment level. And then it's keeping track of the contributions as they come in. And we do soft credits, attachments, everything you'd expect from a full, robust tool. Now, from there, of course, it's very easy to report out on pledges. We can head right into, say, our pledge report. And with this report, like it sounds like, you'll see all of the open pledges. And of course, you can slice and dice as needed. In this case, for example, if I was like, hey, I wonder how many of these pledges are to give versus to raise, let's go ahead and group by pledge type. It'll chew through that real quick. And we'll break it down by to give or to raise. Now, importantly, when it comes to these grouping fields, if it exists on a contact record or exists on a contribution record, you can slice and dice by that tool. From there too, applying gifts to pledges, it's kind of like you'd expect, right? You can add gifts as a one-off, and as you're adding gifts as a one-off, you can apply it to a pledge. Or if you're doing it in a batch, the system will flag, hey, this person who just gave a gift has this one or more pledges. Is this gift supposed to be applied to the pledge? So when it comes to our direct mail tool, we've kind of got two levels of direct mail. So Um, at a base level, you can handle direct mail very similar to what many of your other systems are doing, where you're able to create a list, take that list, set it over to an export file, export it, and send that to the mail house or do that in-house. Option two, we can print right out of our system. So if you think back to the way Razor's Edge used to work, right, where there's a direct link between the system and Microsoft Word, send the file right over to Word, and you're able to generate letters that way. As an organization gets more advanced, though, we have a fully robust direct response module. And to get sort of nerdy with it in like industry level, this is very equivalent to what Blackbaud Direct Marketing, that tool or that product that they sunset. This has that same level of depth in it, where you're able to create robust direct mail plans as well. And those can be house files. We also can handle acquisition. So for those of you who are doing acquisition, able to run that as well right out of our system here. So you rent the list, we upload it in the back end, we use Finder numbers so that as people give, you can bring it back in to the front end. And that's really, I think, an important understanding of this tool in general. Real low barrier of entry, right? Anybody can pick it up and start using it. But as you start to grow in your robustness and your complexity, we're already there. We can do it. The idea is this is the last fundraising and engagement tool you ever have to purchase. It's not something you can grow out of. And my team here has prompted me. I forgot one more poll for y'all. Please, here it comes. I think we'll probably have time for maybe one or two more questions as those come in as well. Great question, Jock. How can we get a personalized demo? Kristen, how can they get a personalized demo?
We can go ahead and have one of our sales team members follow up with you to get that scheduled as well.
Awesome, awesome, team. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming by and letting me show off the system. And remember, 3 steps, 3 takeaways from this. 1, reach out to those Live Buns Plus. 2, decide what you're going to measure and create the dashboards and reports so that you can measure it. Again, focus on 3, no more than 3. If you're like, we want to do everything, you won't do anything. And 3, get the data you need about your major giving program so you can understand how long it takes for a gift to go from start to completion so you can do the type of cash flow planning that your organization needs to accomplish the change that the world needs. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.